Okay, guys, I am here to tell a story that, to me, the world needs to know. Growing up, I was never small. I was always overweight. I was bigger than the other people. But it was okay. I had lots of friends. I was involved in sports. I was active. So when I was 22, I decided at 275 pounds that I wasn't happy with the way I looked. I had no health issues at all besides being overweight. So I decided to go to a gastric bypass seminar and learn about it and see if, this might be the magic thing for me. Because I've tried working out, I've tried diets, I've tried it. And I want to be small like everybody else. I want to be able to go into those stores that all my friends were going into and be able to fit in a piece of clothing in their store. So, after all the testing and everything, I signed on the dotted line as an adult, and I went through with gastric bypass. The first 2 weeks, it was rough. The recovery is hard. But what was hardest was the top of my stomach. My new opening had swollen shut. So I was in the hospital for 2 weeks until they could get a guide wire down into my new stomach. The last time I went in for surgery for that, they said either I was getting a guide wire down in it or I was coming out with a feeding tube. So everything went okay, and life was great. I started losing all this weight. Everybody complimented me about how good I looked. My confidence soared. And then I started getting depressed. And I started having these feelings of anxiety, and I had no idea what it was. I felt like my heart was skipping beats. Well, I then learned that I was going to be put on depression medication and that I was having anxiety attacks because food wasn't an option for me anymore. When people are sad, we reach for food. When we're happy, let's go out to dinner. That's life. That's how we live. That's part of us. So that was really hard. So I had gastric bypass when I was 22. And I had it. I weighed 275 pounds. The lowest I got to was 165. And I had a daughter who is now 10. And we had issues at the end with her gaining enough weight because I couldn't get enough calories in. When I had my twins, they were small because I couldn't get enough calories in to support them growing enough. But that was easy in comparison to what was down the road. August, a couple years ago, I got sick. I started running a fever. I got these weird spots on my legs, and I couldn't keep any food down. And I didn't know what was going on. And I kept going to the doctor. And they said, nothing's showing up. You don't have an infection. This must be in your head. we can't find an answer for you. So here I am struggling, sick, trying to figure out what's wrong with me. I ended up going to a second hospital where they admitted me for 6 days, sent me home with a PICC line. They called me and said, "Mrs. Crowis, we don't know what it is. You need to go to Mayo." So that's what I did. I went to Mayo. And I thank God every day I went to Mayo. Because now you'll hear my Mayo story. Mayo is definitely not close to where we live at all. It's a 4-hour trip one way. But I needed to do this because I was losing weight at a scary rate. And I didn't know what was going on. And I was tired of people telling me it must be in my head because you can't fake a fever. So when I went out to Mayo, they figured out a couple different things that gastric bypass really does to people that happened to me. And people might easily dismiss this story and say, well, you're a rare case, or that won't happen to me, because I thought the same thing. But after testing for several diseases that 1 in a million people have, Mayo finally figured out that my stomach had stopped working. The stomach that was created, the pouch, when I had the Roux-en-Y gastric bypass, had stopped working. So to be told now that you're going to get a feeding tube to stay alive was life-altering. And that's what I want people to be aware of before you sign on the dotted line for gastric bypass or the sleeve. Because I have spent so many hours of my life in the past 4 years in a hospital, missing out on time with my kids because of what gastric bypass has done to my body. I finally don't have a feeding tube because I'm able to keep my weight up high enough with drinking protein shakes and eating as much soft kind of foods that my stomach will take. And it hasn't been an easy road. It was so much testing, so much what ifs. Am I gonna make it? And I wouldn't wish that upon my worst enemy. So Mayo did a trial. We did a feeding tube down my nose, taped it to my face, wore my backpack, and it worked. I was gaining weight. So then they placed one permanently. And to have a tube coming out of your body is something you will never ever get used to. But you make the best of it because you got life to live. And that was my attitude. So Mayo had told me that because of the gastric bypass, my new stomach, or where they had sewn, where they had cut my stomach, that it wasn't working anymore. And also that the pituitary gland in my brain was no longer sending enough signals to my adrenal glands to produce cortisol. And cortisol is what keeps your heart beating. So, gastric bypass, I could say it is my biggest regret in life, easily. But at the same time, it wouldn't have made me the person that I am today. Because I love with my whole heart. Because I've been faced with a really scary situation that my own surgeon who did my surgery told me that that wasn't the answer, that he knows more about gastric bypass than Mayo. So for you patients out there who have had gastric bypass and may be going through some weird stuff that doesn't make any sense, I would go to Mayo. Because if it wasn't for the doctors at Mayo, I wouldn't be sitting in front of this camera right now. I wouldn't be watching my kids grow up. And I wouldn't be thriving. And so I will forever be thankful to Mayo for the treatment that they gave me, because it's an amazing place. And for people choosing gastric bypass, I hope you really just take a moment to reflect, because when they talk about the things that happen to you after you have gastric bypass because you can't reach for that pizza anymore, or you can't reach for that birthday cake everybody's having because you're going to get sick. Is it worth it? Is it worth it to have a feeding tube coming out of your abdomen and having to wear a backpack because of a surgery just to wear a smaller jean size? I hope that this has shed some light, because that's all I want my story to do, is to let other people know that, yes, you want to be healthy. I encourage exercise. I do not encourage gastric bypass, because it has put me through one hell of a tough time. And I am so thankful for my tribe of people I have around me, because without them, I would have never made it through this by myself. You, as a person, have to fight for yourself. And this is a quote that really resonated with me that I'll leave you with. A stronger you. There will be many things in life that you won't have control over. They will cripple you, hurt you, break you into pieces, but they will also build your character, change you completely as a person. So, when you encounter them, don't fear them. Welcome them as opportunities to grow, to be a better version of you. You will be hurt, but in the same process, you will learn how to find a stronger you. Thanks for listening.